speaking here today. It's a pleasure to see so many people. My name is Clare Enston. I work in the Insight team with Gillian, who's at the front here. And so, with no further ado, my artefact that I think links the stuff we do at the national level to patient experience is Yoda. Because he has two massive ears and a smallish mouth. And I really genuinely believe that our role is about listening more than it is about speaking. And it's about listening to patients, so we gather lots of data, really. We run a number of national surveys. So we're very interested to know at a macro level what patients are saying about the services and how those services compare across the country and people's different experiences. But I think we also have a role to listen to yourselves as people who are on the front line trying to improve patient experience. So the FFT project that I'll talk about has really been an exercise in listening actually to people and what they think about FFT and how it could improve. But I did manage to find a Yoda quote, and I still haven't perfected my Yoda impression, so I won't be bringing it out. But Yoda apparently did say, "You will find only what you bring in," and I think that kind of symbolises the fact that we can gather all this information, but unless we want to listen to it, we won't learn anything. So it's kind of really only as good as the people listening to it. And so I endeavour that we should listen to you, and we should listen to patients when they tell us things. So, I mentioned the FFT project. It's been going on for, crikey, months. At least a year ago, we were in the very midst of it, so I would say probably 18 months. And it was really an exercise in listening. We spoke to lots of people. I think overall, something like over 1,300 people, be they from providers, patients, CCGs, arm's length bodies, charities, different groups, people with a very specific focus. So, for example, we interviewed somebody, the chief exec of Mind, for example, to find out what he thought. We also spoke to the NHS Youth Forum to have a view around from young people. What do they think about the way we hear from them? So we really did our best to reach the people that this mattered to. And so we have ended up with a new look FFT. I must say at this point, Amanda, where is Amanda? So I've pinched. So Amanda's from Leeds, you'll hear from Amanda later. But Amanda has been so incredibly enthusiastic, and I pinched the people along the bottom from an agenda that Amanda put together. So thank you.
Yeah,
so thinking about FFT, it has been a bit of a Marmite experience, hasn't it? You know, there are some people that have really got to grips with it and thought, do you know what, it's a bit rubbish in these areas, but it's a means for us to listen to patients, and we could really do some genuinely good stuff here. And other people have taken less of that view and have just kind of really struggled with it. And I get that. There are really good reasons why that's happened. But behind it, there was a good idea. There was a good germ of an idea, which was around, in the aftermath of mid-staffs, the learnings around, if we'd have listened to patients honestly and regularly, we perhaps wouldn't have found ourselves in the situations that manifest there. So I think what we've been trying to do is get back to this original idea, which is that listening to patients is a good thing. It will help us do better in the work that we do. It is part of the Constitution that the NHS seeks feedback from patients and that they're encouraged to give it. So it's there at the heart, but I think maybe how FFT was presented and all the chat around it, it lost the original idea somewhat. So we've been seeing if we can get back to that original idea through some of the work that we've been doing. So really, I wanted to give you a big, massive, you said we did exercise, really, in the spirit of feedback. And I've said you, mainly because we did hear a lot from providers, and I think mainly in the room today there are providers, but obviously we did hear from other people as well, so it'll be clear, I'm sure. So, what we heard from people, particularly providers, but also patients, very strongly from patients actually in this case, was a lot of stuff about the question. So this business of recommending and how do friends and family fit into this, and would you recommend it to them, blah, blah, blah. So very clear messages we had here about it. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I need to go to A&E. Why should I choose which one I go to? I just want to go to A&E. If I am registered with a particular GP practice, my friends and family are already registered there. I don't need to recommend it to them. You know, we're already there. If I'm in a mental health setting, do you know what? Maybe it's my friends and family that have put me here, speaking bluntly. So maybe I've been sectioned. Maybe it's my experiences growing up that have meant that I have mental health issues, and so therefore they are not first and foremost in my mind as people I want to think about. So all these different ways in which the question didn't land very well. And the key thing in the world of surveys and questions is that if it doesn't land very well, it probably doesn't work very well, so it's probably not very good, right? So in terms of interpreting it, a good question is one that is understood in the same way by everybody. That's pretty much the long and short of it. It wasn't being understood by everybody in the same way, and so therefore that has kind of connotations really about what we can do with the data. We were told that a lot of people have to explain the question to staff, so this is really what we want to know about. Can you tell us what it was like to be treated here or whatever? It shouldn't be the case that staff are having to explain this to patients. There was also lots of feedback that's not very accessible. The language is complicated. It's got a massive hypothetical in it. It has a high reading age. The people, all of our patients, are not necessarily excellent speakers of English. They're not always above 18. They have communications needs, which means that it makes it more complicated for them to engage with this exercise. And all of that was leading to people being actively put off responding to FFT. And I think that's where we heard that staff had had some battles with engaging with patients on this. So for all of those reasons, we have changed the question. So moving away completely from the idea of recommending, completely away from including friends and family in the wording of the question. So it's now a more basic question about overall, how was your experience of our service? And I'm sure you're familiar with this question already. It's already in use in a lot of the national surveys. You'll already be using it in your local work, I'm sure, because it is easy to understand. And as part of the work, we did lots of cognitive testing, and we actually went an extra mile to do cognitive testing with younger people and with people with a learning disability to make sure that it was accessible as possible from the get-go rather than having to be explained. So that's the new question. Does that feel better?
Yeah, that's better. Yes.
Terrific. Okay. So we also heard about the free text question. We used to recommend that there was one free text question, and it would be, please elaborate, tell us why you gave the answer you did. And we heard very clearly that it doesn't, because of the first question, the recommend question, following up with the question might not necessarily give you lots of juicy stuff that you could use for improvement. There was lots of thank yous, lots of nurses have been excellent, which is terrific. That is terrific. It's great to have a good pat on the back, but giving less rich stuff that could be used to actually make a difference and change something. So how can we improve that situation? And several trusts told us that they were already asking 2 questions, so can we ask 2 questions? So yes, ask 2 questions. So we've changed the question. We're keeping the please tell us why you gave the answer, because it doesn't assume either that it was a good experience or that it was a poor experience. So we're not going to put anyone off in terms of assuming anything about anything. But the second question invites people to say something about what could have been done better. And I think sometimes there is a nervousness around, can patients feel able to tell us what could have been better, unless we actually ask them explicitly, so they feel invited and empowered to do that. So these are just recommended questions. You can use other ones if you want to. If something else will work better for you, then use that. But we've tried these, we've tested them, we've done cognitive testing with patients, they work well. So if you don't want to expend any extra energy on finding an alternative question, you don't have to, you can run with these. We also had very clear messages about the timings and the specifics of when to ask the question. So in inpatients and A&E, we have this business around ask within 48 hours of discharge. And we heard some very loud messages that this is causing a bit of a problem for people that potentially were using digital methods, perhaps. So digital, clearly, there's a lot to be gained from that. It kind of takes out the physical handing of cards, for example, by receptionists or whoever. But there is something about maybe you lose the human angle a little bit when you go digital. So if you've got a third-party provider sending out text messages, it might not always be appropriate to seek feedback about a real-time event through a text message very quickly after that event. So, for example, thinking about people that have had really traumatic experiences. Maybe they've arrived at A&E, something horrendous has happened, and there's no fixing that. It will remain something that was horrendous, and they will leave A&E, and perhaps they were cared for brilliantly. But the sending a text, within 48 hours of them leaving is not really going to be the tone that they want to be left with having interacted with the NHS. So to do those checks, to bring some humanity into it, might take longer than 48 hours, to look at the list of the people that have been discharged and to take off those numbers, the phone numbers of people for whom we perhaps shouldn't be doing this. We would want to hear from them, absolutely, but perhaps now is not the right time, out of respect for them and what they've just gone through. So there's some difficulties about meeting the precise requirements of the guidance. And other people were telling us, do you know what, we don't want to ask them. We want to ask in the moment, we want to ask while they're with us, because why wait to the end of a long inpatient stay, only to learn after they've gone what we could have fixed for them while they were there. So we'd like to do something different, thanks very much. So we've removed the 48-hour requirement. Simple as that. So in line with the rest of the model around outpatients, mental health, community and primary care, what we're saying here is that patients should be able to give feedback when they choose. And you as providers will have thought about when you proactively ask. And we'll come on to that, there's a separate slide, but you can decide when that is, what's going to work best for you and what's going to work best for your patients and the specific scenarios they're in. Now maternity was really interesting because maternity is quite complex, isn't it? And we had 4 questions in maternity, 3 touch points, and it was a bit of an oddball. And we had lots of conversations, and interestingly, everybody knew it didn't work, but no one really had the answer. So it was a bit more complex, it took a bit more time to work through, but very clear messages again around the timing of the work. So people are just having their babies, and we're asking them, how was having your baby? And stuff like that. So, you know, it's just not very respectful. Staff were struggling to engage with women. Women were saying enough. So we spoke very specifically to women and did a project with them, and they said, we want to give feedback when it works for us. We don't want to wait for 9 months to tell you about things that, you know, worked or didn't work about antenatal. Let's hear about that sooner. We want to tell you sooner. But importantly, when it comes to understanding what we can do with this, going back to the improvement agenda, if we can't understand which part of the pathway it relates to, then we're kind of in limbo still. So it's still very important to understand what the feedback relates to. So again, we've changed the maternity model. So women, like all of the patients, should be able to give feedback on maternity services when they want to. You can again think about when you might want to ask proactively and reach out to women. We suggest that if you're asking about the birth question, you might give 2 weeks window for things to settle down, and just so that it's not within 48 hours of having had the baby. I've mentioned the framing text here. So the framing text, you'll all be using this now anyway, but it's part of the run-up to the question that you use now. You'll be saying, we would like you to think about our service, our ward. We would like you to think about the last appointment you had. Something that gives the respondent the clue as to what you want them to tell you about. So use the framing text to refer to the different parts of the maternity pathway, just as you do now, so no change there. And that will help us understand what to make of the feedback, what we know, what you're asking them in, etc. So, and again, this is in line with the rest of the model. There's more about the framing text in the guidance, for those that have seen the guidance. Again, it is just suggested wording, so when we say, please think about the last appointment, or your stay, or our service, or your visit to, whatever it is, those are just suggestions. So if there are better ways for you to describe the thing you want people to think about, then use them. That's completely fine. So moving on to patients, so they're really important, aren't they? It's really important to not just presume we know what it's like as a patient giving feedback on the NHS. And when we did ask them, we did a separate project a few years ago about this, and they said there's a lot going on in our minds when we give feedback. It's not straightforward. It's not like giving feedback on a hotel or a restaurant or a gym or something that we bought off Amazon, for example. It's really complicated, so let's refresh our memories of what they said. So there's something about the type of feedback. Is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? Is it going to be neutral? That will affect people's willingness or approach to it. What's the topic? Is it something that's quite, quite unemotional, like the cleanliness, for example, or the food? But what if it's something a bit more challenging, like the way the doctor spoke to them, or how they were made to feel, for example, in an interaction? That's tougher because that might be talking about people rather than things. When is it being asked for? So just thinking about that conversation around, is it literally just after the interaction, or is it after a few weeks? That will make a difference to us in terms of our reflection and what we might think about. And the care setting, is it in somewhere where it's a complete one-off? So you've broken your leg, you went to A&E, you maybe stayed in for a few days, and then you left. You're never going to see those people again, probably. Or is it a GP practice where you have an ongoing and long-term relationship with the GP and the practice nurses there? And what if I write something and it gets back to me that people know that it was me that wrote it about them? That matters to people in terms of the repercussions that they might think might happen. And then there's two really interesting things around the state of health. So where are they in their health journey? Have they just been diagnosed with a terminal diagnosis? Have they just been cured of something? Are they in the middle of treatment? Are they going to be living with this condition for the rest of their lives? That also makes a difference. And then this really interesting thought about NHS empathy, which is around people know that we're under pressure. They know that if they give feedback, it will generate more work for us. So they kind of feel conflicted around, do we give feedback or not? I kind of want to say something, but then someone will have to read it, but at the same time, if I don't speak up, the same thing might happen to somebody else and I don't want that to happen. So there's an awful lot going on in people's minds. So let's be mindful of what that is when we think about the timing of giving feedback. And these are all valid approaches, these four, but they have different considerations, different pros and cons. So asking in the moment as care is happening means that you might be able to fix something before that person leaves. You might be able to genuinely improve something for them. It might be at routine intervals. So for example, at have long-term stays, you might want to check in at various points. If you don't ask about discharge though, we know that some really interesting stuff happens at discharge, and it can be that everything's fine until discharge and then there's some delays. If we don't ask after discharge, we won't know what has happened at discharge. And then also this business of when to ask in terms of reflection. So we know that people that are asked as they are leaving a building or as they are leaving the service might have a sense of gratitude towards the NHS. If they're still in the bed, lying there, they might feel uncertain about how honest to be because they're still going to be receiving treatment. When they're at home in their own kind of safe environment, back at base, had time to think about things, the reflections they have might be a bit more honest about what's actually happened, and do you know what, maybe I'm not too happy about that after all. So we'll get different types of reflections from people at the different times that we ask them. So they're all valid, they all will bring different information that you can use, but just be mindful of that as you make decisions about when to ask. In terms of encouraging feedback, patients said we're more likely to give feedback if we know what's happening to it. So if it feels like it's going to go into a black hole and we'll never know anything more, then will we give feedback? Maybe less so. We'll be more likely to give feedback if we know it's going to make a difference. So if you can tell us what's happened to other people's feedback, we'll think, yeah, do you know what, this will be a worthwhile exercise. So tell patients what changes you've made using feedback and set out who will listen to what they say. That might help with some of the concerns around, will it get back to me? Will the doctor that's been treating me get to hear this about me? How will it be handled? I want to feel safe in the knowledge that it's going to be used, but used appropriately. Data users, obviously FFT generates a huge amount of data, so they're an important part of this discussion. They said we still need to get the data and see it on a regular basis. So we will continue to publish the data on a monthly basis. No change there. But still thinking about data, we heard very clear messages that there's too much focus on meeting a high response rate. There's people nodding in the audience, so yeah. So we'll stop publishing the response rate. We would far rather the conversation about FFT be about using what you're learning and making a difference with what you're hearing, rather than a conversation which is around last month you had a 39% response rate, this month it's 38%, what's gone wrong here? I think that's maybe missing the point a little about what this whole exercise is. So we'll still have numbers that demonstrate the volumes of responses that you have, and those numbers that demonstrate, we used to call them the eligible number, so the numbers of people that got discharged from the service. That will help to put the number of responses into a context, because some contexts are quite specific, right? People on a neurology ward tend to have very long stays, so the turnover is going to be quite low in comparison to a different type of ward. So let's have sensible conversations about what the right amount of feedback is that will demonstrate a real commitment to listening to patients. But let's not beat ourselves up over meeting a high response rate. when actually what really matters is what we're hearing and what we're doing about it. So this is the only point that we're not going to do anything about, which sounds controversial, but people said we need the data to retain comparability. And the truth is that it's not comparable now. And we've been saying this for several years, but I think it's been one of the messages that's taken some time to get heard, potentially. So it's not comparable. Please be very clear about that. And the reason it's not comparable is because it's got so much flexibility already, and the direction of travel is to give more flexibility about how you collect patients' feedback through this thing we call FFT. So the flexibility that's inherent within it, so whether you use paper or mobile phones or tablets, when you ask, who's doing the asking? For some people that really matters, so it might be that the people that care for them are the best people to get feedback from. Normally, kind of social science best practice would say it should be someone completely independent from the person to get feedback, because then you have that kind of safety value. We know that's not necessarily the case, and that nurses are handing out feedback forms, and that's fine. But it will potentially have an impact on what people say about it. So it's not comparable, and we're not going to make anything in the policy that means it is more comparable. And I think it's not fair really to staff. If you're getting challenged from, I don't know, boards or other places around how are we faring against our neighbours, I would say there are other data sources we can use for that. We can use our inpatient survey, we can use our staff survey, we can use our A&E survey. That will give us a real robust measure of how we're doing in comparison to other people. FFT won't do that, and we should use it in different ways. So there is value to the numerical data, so you can use it as an informal temperature check to see what's going on, and looking at it over time, I think, is one of the most powerful ways we can use it. And it should be used alongside other data sources, as I've just said. So please don't use it in isolation, and please use it in a sensible way. So thinking about this, have you heard of Making Data Count? Yes? So this was a publication, I think from probably last year. The link is there, and we're going to get the slides. But if you just Google Making Data Count, I'm sure you'll find it. But it's really all about analysis of data, and sensible and good analysis of data using statistical process control. So the next slide will give you some examples, but you can see then where something definitely is deteriorating or improving, and whether people are meeting a particular self-imposed standard that they have. But it will just help you make sense of the data. So, and for a policy document on data and analysis, it's terribly engaging, actually. It's terrific. So if you haven't read it, I would encourage you to read it, because it's really very good. So there's some examples here around. You can see on this first one, there's a single point. So clearly something very interesting is happening there that warrants attention. You can see the rest of the time, the data kind of just bobbles around the mean. So we're not getting remarkably worse, we're not getting remarkably better in general, but something happened at that point which is interesting and we should find out. And you see on the top right, you can clearly see the downward trajectory. So something sustained is happening, that means that something's getting worse. And likewise over here, it's kind of sustained under the mean, but then sustained improvement over time. So putting it in that kind of context, rather than just a monthly snapshot of the FFT data, will help you understand what's really happening. So we also had some frequently asked questions. So can we add extra questions in addition to what is currently now the recommended question, but what will be the overall experience question? Can other people fill it in? Should we capture demographic information? Can we add things to it? Can we add colour, smileys, smiley faces, whatever? So the answer to all of those, let's try an alternative way of checking. Yes, is yes. Yes to all of those. So add whatever extra questions is going to be useful to you. If you've got a particular focus on cleanliness or food or communication of information, then add them. Change them over time. Mix it up. Whatever works for you in the focus and the things that you're trying to tackle through your quality improvement work, you can use FFT to do that. Anyone can fill it in. You might find it useful to have some kind of identifier on there so you know who's filling it in, so to know that it's a view from a carer or a visitor, for example. Thanks, Jim. Capture demographic information, yes, absolutely, it will be helpful to understand who are we not hearing from as well as who we are hearing from, but it's up to you which demographic information you want to look at. Is it age? Is age really important to you? Is race? Is gender? Is sexuality? Is disability? All of those could be really important. And yes, amend it if you think it needs to be made more engaging, so people will go, okay, I'll answer this, particularly younger people, or people who might need a bit of help potentially to make it easier. So do you want a red to green, smiley faces, whatever is going to make it better, then do that. I think maybe the battery is going to Other questions. Can we offer further conversation to patients if they need their details? Wouldn't that contravene anonymity? Can we use it for broader purposes? And is it compliant with GDPR? Yes, yes to all of that. If a patient wants to leave their details because they would like a further conversation, but if they've done that from their own choice, then grand. We know that that can be sometimes really important to have a narrative with people rather than it being just a one-off exercise. In terms of broader purposes, yes. Revalidation purposes, if you're a clinician, use it for that. And there is a separate bite-sized guide on our website, which Gillian's already pointed out on the web pages, the FFT website, which talks about how FFT is compliant with GDPR. You had a question? So my take on it would be that before publishing any of the free text, any identifiable data should be removed.
And that includes staff?
Absolutely, because I think staff are entitled to the same respect as patients. It's a really good example, and I think it's right to emphasise that. I would just not publish anything that's going to identify anybody. Absolutely. Okay, I'm conscious of just a bit of time. So just on practical points, some people say it would be good to have a 6-month lead-in to make some of the changes. And if we're using digital stuff, it might take more than just a single switch of a button or whatever it is to actually put these changes into place. So that's fine. So there's 6 months now. It's a touch less because we are in October, and the changes come into effect from the 1st of April. So there's still 5 2/3 months to think through all the things that you might want to do differently that are in the new guidance. And if it takes a couple of days, then it takes a couple of days. I would do that in March then, rather than do it in April, so that you're good to go from April. So next steps. We've published the guidance. It's really all about preparing now, having the conversations around what do we want to do differently. You don't have to do anything differently other than change the question wording, but I suspect many people would want to do that anyway because there was such a strong feeling about it. And then we'll start with this new question from the 1st of April, submit the data as normal in May, and we'll publish it as normal in June. So that's the long and short of it. So just a couple of more things. People are quite concerned about how we're swimming in this free text. What do we do with it? It's kind of, can you help us? So yes, we're starting a project about free text, and there'll be an email address I'll put up in a minute. If you want to get involved, email that email address and put for Clare, or whatever. For Clare, interested in free text. That will suffice. And can you help us make sense of how to triangulate data with other sources? Yes, that's one of the things we're going to be looking at. So again, I think in one of our recent updates that just went out, there was a call for if you are doing some really terrific stuff around using FFT data alongside of the data, and you want to tell everybody about it, tell us, and we will help that happen. Resources, many of these are on your tables. So there's a website, the guidance is on the website, we've got case studies. Gillian just mentioned the DAISY video, we have other case studies that we've updated that are on there. We have a help desk right at the bottom, that's the help desk email. So if you have any kind of really specific practical points and questions, you can email them. This is the email about free text, so england.insight-queries@nhs.net. If you want to find out more about the free text project, just say to Clare, I want to know more about the free text project. And that'll be it. So thanks very much.
Thank you.